A big party for you? Yeah.
Party for,
And so you're live. Well, no, you might go back after 3.
yeah, well,
I'll call the meeting to order. And before we get going down our agenda, just to get some things straight for public comment participants. They can dial either the numbers below 1-312-626-6799 or 1-646-558-8656 and enter the meeting ID 977-6119-6006, then press pound and then pound again. If your line is muted, press *6 to unmute. And then that'll get you in so you can hear what's going on. We'll open our meeting today, prayer by myself, and then pledge by Commissioner Dean. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this day. And Lord, we just pray as a board of commissioners that we work together to get through these things that needs to be discussed and need to be taught. And Lord, again, we just thank you for this day. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call, please.
Okay, District 1, Commissioner Dean. District 2, Commissioner Gary Heberlin.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Joe Wyatt.
Here.
District 5, Commissioner Joe Wyatt.
Present.
And District 4, Chairman Bob Coleman.
Here. Any additions, corrections, or deletions to the agenda? If not,
I'll move adoption of the agenda as presented.
support. We have a motion by Commissioner Dean, supported by Commissioner Heberlin, to adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same.
I'll move adoption of the agenda.
Motion carried. Any corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I go ahead and approve the minutes from our November 3rd meeting.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner Wyatt, that we approve the minutes of November the 3rd, 2020. All those, are any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Correspondence, petitions, and introductions. Did I see them in my packet?
There's
I didn't think I seen it, okay. Commissioners report, Commissioner Dean.
I would just like to express my observations on the job well done by our local clerks. I've communicated with a few of them prior to and since the election. It was a hectic couple of weeks for them, but it seemed like they performed in a stellar fashion. Some of our clerks, I know in Marion Township, they recruited some high school kids who were able to work at the polls and poll workers. I wasn't even aware that you could be a poll worker even if you weren't 18 years old. And so we had 4 kids who went, and it was a great experience for them and as the township clerk. And I thought it was a very positive thing as well. So I'd just like to commend the county clerk and her staff and the township clerks for a job well done.
Okay. Commissioner O'Meara.
Nothing really outside. A couple broadband meetings. I sat in on one this morning and then one a couple of days ago, but I'll provide input when we talk about that at the committee level. If we do, we will.
Yeah, we can discuss that under committee report. Sound good?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, Commissioner Heberlin.
Yeah, again, as Commissioner Dean already said, I want to thank Denise and her staff and the crew and every precinct that did a great job. And I think this is probably what they say is the most people that's ever voted in the history of the United States. And thank you for the job well done. The only other thing I have is a personnel committee has met a couple times, and that will be discussed in our finance meeting with several different things that we've covered in the last couple meetings. And report.
Commissioner Webb?
Like Gary, we've got a couple reports, broadband committee and the personnel committee, so we'll do that for item 16.
Okay. Just want to let you know that we had talked about designated assessor. We did get our 16th person that signed that.
Okay.
And so that's what we needed to get the majority. Now that's on the way and that'll be coming up, to be voted on by the commissioners. Administrators report.
All right, so I gave everyone a handout. I'm just going to attempt to get have it for the meeting or anyone who wishes to watch it. What I wanted to do was I wanted to review with you the county's budget and then the state's budget outlook for fiscal years 2021 and 2022. As you're aware, the state's budget started on October 1st. So they've already adopted their general fund budget. Obviously, ours is still in the proposed format until we have our public hearing on the 1st, and then we have to adopt it before the end of the year. But just to recap, our proposed budget is currently balanced at $15.6 million. We're estimating our carryover to be about $1 million. Now that's our fund balance, if you will. I mean, that number is still moving a little. We are monitoring that. It's based on how our revenues and expenditures will end for the year. We're still estimating around $1 million. It might be a little bit more at this point in time, but it's still a little bit early to know that. The budgeted contingency that we have so far, so this would be for any type of expenditure that comes up during the year that's not budgeted. We have about $122,000 set aside for any contingency items. And then in order to get the budget balanced where it is at, we're utilizing a rainy day fund of about $230,000. And then we did budget for a delinquent tax fund transfer of $999,000. But based on where we're at and what our policy requires stays in that fund, we actually only have about $650,000 available. So we're budgeting obviously more than we should be taking. And then in addition, we have a pending settlement on the tax foreclosure proceeds lawsuit. We've been advised to book a liability for about 6 years back, but our attorneys are telling us that could change based on the courts. Well, right now it's 6 years, but it's hard to say if it'll go back further or if it'll be more in our favor. And then with regard to the state's 2021 adopted budget, so if you recall back earlier in the year, they were projecting some budget shortfalls, if you will. They were able to balance the 2021 budget because they utilized some CARES Act funds in 2020, which created a carryover for 2021. The state is keeping the revenue sharing consistent with the 2020 rate before the elimination of the August payment. And then the state is indicating that they're still operating with a high level of uncertainty. That's just regarding COVID, the cases, their response, the national state economies, state revenues, and then the potential for additional stimulus. As many of you know, we just don't know if that's even going to come about. So when we start to look at 2022, at least for the county, you can see that we have some pressures that are existing in 2021. So when we get into 2022's budget process, those pressures are not going to disappear without action. We know right away in 2022, we're going to have increased costs for compensation and benefits because we have negotiated wage increases. We always have that rising cost of healthcare that we have to, deal with basically. So that's still going to be on the horizon. And then in addition, we have several contractual and service agreements that typically increase from year to year. That could be agreements for security services. It could be software agreements, maintenance type agreements. Typically those do increase year after year. So with that information, if we assume no upward revisions to our revenue projections, typically our major increase in revenue is from our taxes, and there's uncertainty surrounding the growth in property values and what that will look like. If there is anything, it could be minimal. And then we already know we have an issue with our delinquent tax revolving fund. So we don't know what's going to be available to utilize in our general fund budget. So if there is anything, it will be minimal depending on how much we utilize in 21. So the state's outlook, they have similar budget pressures with regard to wage and compensation. They're looking at introducing new indigent defense standards. They have some criminal justice reforms, and then they also have pending legal settlement for the Flint water crisis. And then again, they don't know about the COVID response costs and what that will look like going into into 2022. So right now, the state's projecting that there could be a $500 million to $1 billion shortfall for 2022. Obviously, it's early, but the important thing is that they're planning, they're starting to look ahead. And the departments have been instructed to prepare reduction plans for fiscal year 2022. This was an executive budget recommendation. And they are planning to maintain the freezes on discretionary spending and hiring as well. There will obviously be exceptions to critical public health and safety positions. So I just wanted to point this out to you to make you realize that this is not going away. And if we don't get in front of this, when we look at our proposed budget for 2021, it's going to be more difficult to balance 2022. So we're at a good time where if we started looking at implementing some changes, it could get us on the right track and turn us around for 22. And at the bottom of this, I just wanted to show you a best practice for fiscally sustainable budget process. It's establishing visions and goals, which I know we talked about a little bit at our last meeting with regard to strategic planning, long-term planning, being creative and coming up with ideas, thinking outside of the box as far as our operations. I know it's hard to think about doing more with less, but it is possible with all of our technology advancements that we can make this work. If we set priorities and objectives, that will help us with developing our budget. And then, of course, we have to continually monitor the budget. So I just wanted to share this information with you. I think it's important as we go into next month and looking at adopting that budget. I just want to make you aware that there are things that we need to address. Otherwise, they're not going to go away. And 2022 could look, we're not in a good path right now for 2022. We'll just put it that way. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we work through these last few meetings of the year and start off the new year.
Tara, one question. I think it's my question I have. Going back to the state departments have been instructed to prepare a reduction plan
Yes.
For plans for 2022.
Mhm.
Did they have a goal in mind, like that 3 million, 2 million?
Not that I know of. This was addressed by the Department of Treasury in a presentation that I sat on last week. And no, they did not have a projection for what that number was, but they are making their departments prepare some type of budget reduction plan.
On the liability tax foreclosure
Yeah.
case, assuming going back 6 years, do we have any idea how much our liability is using that 6-year number?
I believe what the treasurer had shared was about 1.2 million, but I can't speak on that. I can't remember if there was an extra year in there because the attorney's recommending that we look at the prior 6 years, but again, it's based on the courts as to what they decide.
And we have about 800,000 in reserve in anticipation of that.
Well, and then too, in talking with the treasurer, we wouldn't want to completely deplete that because I know she utilizes that money to care for property. I think she pays some legal fees out of there. There's just different items that she needs to
No, but
have.
there's a lump sum that she has set aside just for anticipated payoff on this.
Well, the 800,000 is the entire,
But I thought that was separate from the regular annual amounts that come in from that as well.
well, that's the balance in the tax foreclosure fund.
Yeah, but you have you set up a liability?
We will, yes, we're
You will?
working on that. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have that in for the end of the year.
That's going to go into 2020?
Yes.
And that would be, you said 1.2 or something?
It's looking like it. I'm going to confirm those numbers with our treasurer. Her projection may have an extra year because I have to figure out
So that's gonna pretty much decimate any.
But we don't know what that's 60, that's just an estimate that the lawyers have put out there.
Correct.
We don't know for sure if that's it.
Yeah, it
Right.
Could be worse.
could be a lot worse. Could
Yeah,
be,
just there's
Could
a
be better
lot,
too,
a lot of
It's
uncertainty
unlikely.
with regard to that lawsuit, yeah.
Yeah.
But the bottom line of this is that money that's in there, we have to think very carefully before we dip out of it, because we have this looming
yeah,
monster
yeah,
jet
for
that's
sure.
gonna be over our heads, and we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Right,
So this delinquent tax fund has been utilized to supplant the normal operations budget.
right.
At least, no, we're talking two different things here. Now. Be
Right,
careful.
we are.
Tax foreclosure fund and delinquent tax fund are two different things.
Yeah,
Which brings me to my next question. In this contingency of 122,000, you're assuming the 999 delinquent tax?
Mhm.
Okay. But again, I realize the policy as written limits it to the 650. There's quite a bit more money in there. A modification of the policy could be passed that would bridge that gap,
It
at least to
could.
put us in balance here.
We look at, the policy requires we keep 1.5 times the prior
Yeah.
5 years average
Correct.
payout. Just so that way we have enough to make those local jurisdictions whole.
But we have ample for that, for sure. The question is,
For that.
how much further we want to go with,
Right,
that is a reserve that, and not that should be carelessly tapped into, but it is a reserve that is there. I mean, the worst case scenario is they would have to borrow funds to pay off the locals, and the interest rates as low as they are, that's not,
Yeah.
not an unthinkable option, really. you know.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we really need to look at all that extra cash that we have laying around, because rates will go up, and it is 20 million that we carry in raw cash, that if rates are 2%, that's 400,000 a year in extra income just through investing that amount rather than letting it sit there. That will help. In 2022, rates will be higher. And even at 1%, it's still 200,000. So, our treasurer has to start looking at that stuff. These are little things, but they all add up when you put them all together.
Well, you had mentioned a couple times asking for creative ideas. We did that at 2 years worth of budget meetings. And the summarization of both those budget meetings at the end of both years, they came up to recognizing that it's staffing levels, and more staffing levels. I mean, that's the highest cost that we have, right? And then you mentioned a moment ago about, that nobody likes the idea of saying doing more with less, but we have to consider that and do that. And when you say doing more with less, aren't we talking about staffing? I mean, let's just say
That's our
that,
major,
Well, yeah.
that's our major.
throw that word out there
For
on a regular
service
basis so that
organization.
it's not poo-pooed around like it's, less pencils and we all have to figure out how to make do. It's staffing. And that's one of the issues that we have to realize is a hard fact, is that we have to decrease our staffing levels when possible. And evaluation of that, we'll be talking about that in the finance meeting. And this is what you're saying in very flowery language, but it comes down to the dirty truth is it's the cost of employment.
And I think we can find a good balance. I understand that we are a service organization. We're not here to make money. We know that, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure that, we have a sustainable budget and we're not having to, dip into these reserves. I mean, they're there for a reason. I get that, but how do we ever replenish it for the next, major catastrophe if we're not able to, because we're utilizing it in our budget. So something to think about as we move through the rest of the year.
Okay, thank you, Tara. Public comments, agenda items only. Appointments to standing committees. Sanilac Transportation Board. Is Marjorie out there? Marjorie was the only one that,
Well, I would confirm the reappointment of Marjorie Ross to the Sanilac Transportation Board.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Dean, supported by Commissioner Healy, that we appoint Michael Ross to a 4-year term expiring 12/1/24 to the Sanilac Transportation Board. Any comments? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. County Commissioner appoints the boards. I don't have anything. Anybody got anything? General resolutions, committee reports.
Committee reports.
Okay,
Okay, broadband committee, they had a meeting, it was a Zoom meeting, it was a couple days ago, I came in a little late. They talked about the extension of the survey, they've got a couple hundred respondents for the survey moving forward. Hopefully, we'll extend it to the end of December, I think they were talking about the information that they're getting out of. There's some concern that collecting this information isn't resulting in action being taken and when will action be taken. But, this is the organization that we're utilizing, to carry out this objective. That's the Connected Nation, Michigan. And this is one of their, their components of providing a service to us is to collect the raw data. And so far the ISPs in the meeting that we had where they were in the building, they all agreed that it sounds like the Connected Nation organization can collect data that they themselves don't necessarily have, and that would be advantageous. Now, it is our proprietary information that's being collected, but I would agree that I would think that we want to share it with the ISPs to the advantage of the citizens in Sanilac County. So to that extent, the agreement is that we continue moving forward with Connected Nation, collecting that information that's in the survey. The discussion was talk about a catalog of the vertical assets within Sanilac County. Connected Nation has done that in the past, but it's at a cost to the county to collect that information. So we're rethinking about how that information could be collected. One of the ways that was discussed was, and we're talking about vertical assets. And for example, most of them they're talking about are elevators and the legs of elevators. So you've got elevators go up 150 feet or whatever. That's about what the ISPs need as a base height requirement is about 130 feet. And so those types of infrastructure components may be cataloged through, local mill operations where, they take that product and take it to mill. So there might be a way to collect that information so we can reach out to them and have a catalog of what's available out there. Apparently, one of the concerns is that because they're agricultural buildings, they're not necessarily inspected and there's no building permits for them. So, Joe Farmer puts it up and it's in operation, and the building department that would keep track of buildings normally, because it's an ag building, they don't have a record of it. So that's one of the considerations that we're moving forward on, is cataloging those vertical assets. I can't quite recall if there's anything else. Joe, you were in on that?
Yeah, I was in on that, and then another one this morning. I mean, it really seems to me like we've got some representations from the providers, but there's no satellite Hughes or Exceed. They're not there. Frontier's not there. And my my take is that there's a real reticence to really reach out and try to drive this by the providers. There's the universal service money that's out there from the FCC. They're just, because it's tough to get this. It seems to me, given that it's expensive to put out more fiber, $40,000 per mile. So you have to have, 40 families or 80 families, because they're paying for $1,000 if it's 40 families per mile. It's a tough battle, and it seems that the only way that this is going to be successful is that the communities are going to have to get involved and do some investing in vertical assets that will allow for penetration in smaller clusters, and to put some dark fiber out there so that all the service providers have to do is hook into it. I mean, that to me seems like the only way that it's really going to work. But on the upside, Starlink is there. And I really do think Starlink is the answer, because it'll be $500 per family to hook in and $50 a month. And
What are you saying that is, Joe?
Starlink, it's part of the SpaceX Elon Musk thing, where he's got 860 some odd low flying satellites with, not a lot of the echo and noise in the system. They've been launching that since 2018. The last one was last month. And those are getting into position. And currently anything above the 45th parallel, which is around Alpena, they're getting it. And January, February, the satellites will come down in position for further down. So, there's a lot of beta testing. My neighbor's going to get in on it. I'm going to try to get on it too, because the speed is about 150 per second, bits per second. So that's pretty good without a lot of delay. And that seems about, otherwise we got a tough haul at $40,000 per, a mile for the fiber optic. It's tough. I didn't get the sense that the carriers are that interested. They kept saying, we have, it all takes is time and money, and we've got the time. So if you pay for it, we'll do it.
Well, that's definitely going to be a new competitor in the arena.
Yeah.
Which may spur these ISPs on the ground to broaden their idea of where they want to push things. You mentioned, you didn't say grassroots, but you kind of said, groups have to be. Well, that was discussed. One of the ISP guys, he says, listen, we were with a community. They went out, they went door to door, knocking on doors. They signed out X amount of people that were willing to spend this much money and then this much per month. And so we did it. And that's exactly what they're all saying is, hey, we're happy to do it if it makes sense. And over again in that meeting, it was come down to local communities getting together, whether they're in zones or districts or blocks, however you want to put it, and saying, yeah, here's a group of 50 citizens willing to put down this much money up front and pay this much a month. What can you do for us? He said at that level, we're willing to do that. But it was these individual citizens going out as a community and canvassing the neighborhood and signing people up. Because
Is this part of that committee we put together?
yeah, the ISPs aren't really doing that. They're not sending out some guy on the ground talking to neighbors saying, this is what we're looking to do, right? They might send out a document through the mail or otherwise through an email, but they don't have the same kind of face-to-face connection with the neighbors from that group to say, let's all get in on this. And they kind of pointed back that that's what it's going to take, in some of these rural areas where you don't have that kind of demographics to have them come forward.
In this morning's meeting, it was like, the universal service money, because we're so spread out, like in a square mile up here, especially if there's a farm on it, there might only be two families on it in that whole square mile. And there's no way the economics will ever work. So, they'll say that, the lifeline, you can get, people with low income can get free cell phones and stuff like that. But it doesn't, they kind of placate you. It's a tough problem to solve if you're going to go with the traditional method. It just doesn't seem like it's going to work.
So, Joe, I think you brought it up for everybody's edification here. In layman's terminology, okay, I think we've established so far, right or wrong, we've established that it's not affordable for a Comcast or whoever else to come and put it in our rural district. And the second best thing would be the Starlight. I think that's where it's going.
Yeah.
But I don't think
At a cost of
$40,000 a mile.
a mile.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, those
It's gonna
costs
subsidize.
are estimates, and they've actually spoken about. I had one guy tell me that it could be as low as $15,000 a mile. It all depends on a considerable amount of variables. And to suggest that, like, hey, this is where we're at right now. My suggestion is we continue with Connected Nation. They've invested most of it. Let them do their survey and let's take it to the next step. In the meantime, the Starlink is moving ahead regardless, and it may end up being the best, the answer essentially. But at this point, it hasn't
There's,
progressed to that.
yeah, there were other technologies that were discussed this morning.
Yeah.
But
The funding that you mentioned, the Universal Service Fund, they mentioned that the ISPs they said there are grants out there that are offered to them, but they choose not to take them because, let's face it, grants typically come with strings attached, and they have weighed it out and said, we don't want to have to jump through all those hoops to access that funding. So for whatever reason, some of the funding streams out there are not to their liking. But according to Connected Nation, Dan Manning, once they partner with a municipality, that offers up a different type of revenue stream that they didn't previously have access to. So it's possible there still may be some ideas that can, blossom into action on the ground as we move forward in the next month or two.
yeah,
Because it happened in the past, a couple of years ago, some communities in northern Michigan was able to push fiber through the entire community because there was a grant at that time that offered the ability to do so.
Is that with the one county up north?
Yeah, that was one of the county, and that opportunity has since gone away. It may not come back, or it may come back. So if we can have something in play that we can take advantage of it when the opportunity arises through a collaboration of the ISPs and the county, well, we'll be in a better position to do so.
When do you think we'll have some type of answer? A month, 6 months, a month?
I would say by February, the end of February particularly, we'll have a considerable more information to be able to pass on to the board as to where we're going. It all depends on this survey and how useful it becomes to them, how many people participate in it.
yeah, that's key. We have 400 residents in the survey now, and I think you need 1,700 or so. So it's got to be promoted by us. And
We may have to do another press release. I know that they've done it in the paper. Anybody that's got a social media page should be sharing it. I've done it, asked people to share it.
yeah, it's a process. I think Dan is a very smart guy, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And this survey, we got to get it done. It's all part of his process, and eventually he's going to start giving us some good answers.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're on the right track. You're doing.
Well, we're doing
Due
something.
diligence, the way it should be done.
Yeah,
And I just want to remind everyone, you've all heard the same thing as I've heard sitting in his meetings. We want broadband or whatever, Starlight, because a lot of people that work in the city could be working in Sanilac County or may entice them to move to Sanilac County if they can have broadband. But I just want to do some facts and figures real quick off the top of my head. Back in 1960, we had 48,000 people in Sanilac County. Today we have 40. Kids are not staying in Sanilac County for several reasons.
Right.
One is jobs, one is technology.
Yep.
What happens when that takes place? We have nobody building new homes. We don't have property taxes, and we're back to where we're at. What do we do to cut the county budget? So I think if we can move forward with technology in Sanilac County, it's a big plus for us. So into my spiel.
and that is the projected trend that, the cities will grow and the rural areas will drop further behind. That is that's the 15, 20-year trend.
And we've had to start somewhere, right? I commend you guys for.
I think that, technology at this level, it becomes obsolete usually every 3 years or less. So, the numbers that we have right now will be different in a year and a half. So it may become cheaper they may have different types of, maybe copper wire is going to be the thing, and they can reemploy all the copper wire that's been laid out.
Yeah, it's a shame that they've given up on exploring the possibility of that because that's already strong everywhere.
And there was some discussions that, copper wire can carry, 800 megabytes, or 80 megabytes per second, which is really good.
AT&T has the rights to it in certain areas, and they refuse to use DSL or anything on their lines. So I guess since they own it, they can choose whether to use that technology or expand it or just simply avoid it, which they've done.
We'll see.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think they're adverse to making.
Thank you for the update.
That was a
Wait,
good
we got one
discussion.
more committee, Bob. Personnel Committee report.
Okay,
So yes, we'll be talking about that at the Finance Administration. The Personnel Committee met again to discuss a couple of things. One of them was the prosecutor's office vacancies, and the other one was, what was that?
Friend of the court.
Friend of the court.
Friend of the court, that's right. Go ahead.
No, I want to just save this till we get to our finance committee,
To finance, okay, there you have it.
because we could go on forever here.
okay.
I bet we will.
I have one thing that I want to bring up, but mine's going to be short. Several months ago, the emergency responders, they met and they were talking about the portable radios that they use when they're out in the field. In certain areas, it was hard to get that message from them and hard to use them. And so they were looking at 800, that's the number of a portable radio. And last week we met by Zoom and talked about that, and they tested them along the lake. And they got good results. So they're going to look at some things a little more and come up with,
Oh, good.
the cost though was quite expensive, like $3,500 to $4,500 a radio.
Well,
But they, so far, the tests have been good. So we're gonna look at that more.
the Marlott Fire Department was hurt by that.
Yeah,
I think that's how that started.
It did.
They couldn't, you know.
okay. Unfinished business, I don't think there's any. New business. 128-20, approval of 2020 current plans.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of current claims for 2020 identified in accounts payable report dated November 10th, 2020 for the general bank account in the amount of $144,701.93. And you can see the itemized list below. And on the next page.
That's the following motion.
That's the next one.
Oh, did I jump ahead? Sorry.
We did see it on the claims. We saw email too.
I did. I apologize. I wanted to get this meeting over with quick. The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of current claims for 2020 identified in accounts payable report dated November 10th, 2020 for the general bank account in the amount of $144,701.93.
Support.
That's the end of that one. We'll go to the next one.
You make that, Joe? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Motion made by Commissioner Healy, supported by Commissioner O'Meara. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those. Just missed my hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. FA 12920, budget adoptions, amendments, appropriations, and transfers.
Now we'll do this right.
Okay,
Okay, the Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the following amendments, transfers, and establish the following accounts. And now I can say listed on page 3 and 4.
Support.
motion made by Commissioner Healy, supported by Commissioner O'Meara. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 130-20, approval of additional general fund bank account checks charged to October.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the payment of additional general fund bank accounts charged to October 20th as follows. The total on that's $592,194.27.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Healy, supported by Commissioner Dean. Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 131-20, approval of agreement for professional services, Sanilac County Child Abuse Prevention Account.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the agreement between Sanilac County and the Sanilac County Child Abuse Prevention Council with funding from the SAVE Partnership Millage. Further authorizes the board chairman sign the necessary documents.
Motion made by Commissioner Hebring, supported by Commissioner Dean. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 13220, approval of agreement for professional services, Violence Elimination Council.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approve the agreement between Sanilac County and the Sanilac County Violence Elimination Council with funding from the SAVE Partnership millage. Further authorizes the board chairman to sign the necessary agreement.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Hebling, supported by Commissioner O'Meara. Any questions? Comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 133-20, approval of employment agreements, Veterans Affairs.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the constitution of the employment agreements for the transportation coordinator between the Sanilac County Department of Veterans Affairs and John Brinker and John Maher at $12 per hour effective January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021, and further authorizes the board chairman sign the necessary documents. That's not constitution, I said it's continuation.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner Dean. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 134-20, approval to dispose of county property agreement.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves the agreement between the Sanilac County Sheriff's Office and Joshua G. Horst for the purpose of transferring ownership of the K-9 BICA and that further authorize the board chairman sign the necessary agreement.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner O'Meara. Any discussion? I think this is a good one. I like this one. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 135-20, authorization to invest restricted open funds into MERS funds.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the investment of $207,286.57 in restricted open funds into the MERS Trust.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner O'Meara. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 136-20, authorization of cost allocation plan invoices.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the recommended billing for the proposed 2019 cost allocation invoices.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner O'Meara. Any discussion?
I have a question here as well. Sarah, this includes everything that was listed there. We had some discussion at the committee level of excluding like the library because they had gotten a legal opinion that indicated they didn't have to pay it. So what's our position that we're going full forward? What's our expectation from those groups that have indicated that they aren't going to pay it or obtain legal advice that they don't have to pay it? We're just gonna, what do we do if they don't pay, I guess?
Well, we can invoice them. There's no guarantee, like in the library situation, that they'll actually pay it.
What is the invoice list, the plan? Because we did have a list that had several departments that weren't paying or they had a considerable reduction. We had a lively discussion about it.
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing
Well, that's the list we had at the last
Yeah.
meeting.
that list, which included like three, that's where we talked about the vehicle,
The
Yes, we did.
Waymaster vehicle.
Master in lieu of them paying
So
the,
that list
Yeah.
with those exclusions are what we're voting on?
Yes.
So we're really down to the library, right? Because I think we somewhat agreed or 100% agreed on the truck with the County Road Commission, correct?
Now,
Yeah,
in lieu of them paying cost
Right,
allocation,
right.
they would continue to pay for the Waymaster.
Yeah.
So that language, we never amended it.
No.
we agreed to
How it was-
adopt the schedule as it was presented.
That's the schedule that,
Yep.
okay,
But
okay.
I guess coming back to the library folks, we're talking about a $7,000
7,000.
Yeah,
payment to them.
We excluded that, didn't we?
We did
I
not.
know, but it's in here, so. I mean, we can-
But we had
Yeah,
talked
that
about
was
the
one. I,
possibility of excluding it, and I guess that brings me back to the futility of pursuing this and keeping the anxiety going with the library folks over such a small amount. What I would like to do is offer an amendment to exclude the library village from this input, from this list.
yeah, I would support that, and
I do a friendly amendment. Gary made the motion, Joe seconded it.
You can make it friendly or either way, as an official amendment, either way.
hostile or friendly, I'm okay with
I had
it.
to use the word hostile, but I mean.
Could
You
get that.
support that, Joe?
Pardon? I did. support it.
Okay. So it's time for discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my only thought, and, you know, I've been part of this cost allocation with other departments, and Joel, you've already said it, we've had to negotiate prices, and just backing up further, we still took in considerably a larger amount this year than we've ever taken, but we've had to negotiate that with different departments. Some have paid in full, and we're down to one. And I appreciate your motion, Mr. Dean, but is that going to lead us down the road next year? Somebody will said you didn't even make them
Well,
pay a dime.
the only issue at hand are the millage funds.
Mhm.
Okay, the other agencies that we collect from, there's no question that we have that ability to collect it. I think what distinguishes the library a little bit, though, is the fact that we really don't provide any services for them other than transferring that millage money to them.
Okay.
We're not, the others we can use to identify some level of service that we're providing. This comes back to that allocation of just general administration that gets divided among these accounts, which leaves sometimes a situation where someone's paying, $7,000 to them. It's significant because their millage isn't that large. When they wonder, what are we getting for it other than us putting it on the ballot and then handing them the money every year, So.
Mhm.
Well, you mentioned it was upon further scrutinization that you came to the understanding that for that particular millage, that particular organization, that the pass-through function that we performed was considerably less than the 7,000 that we were asking for. It was around 7, right?
Right.
And
7.5 or something.
And so it can be adjusted accordingly on an individual basis. That was the expectation with that cost allocation across the board in the first place, was for it to be adjusted individually when they came back if they contested. But there's been several other millage-based organizations that are digging their heels in and saying no.
Well, there haven't been
Well,
though.
I thought DTF was one.
Well,
Yeah.
No, they didn't say
There
no.
was a negotiated settlement on that one, of a lower amount. But I don't want to revisit that issue, but here, I think in view of the fact that they have in hand a legal opinion that says that they are not required to pay that, and that our legal advice did not contradict that. I'm suggesting that we, rather than have this issue lingering out there continually, that we just exclude them.
Yeah, because they're not receiving any benefit because there's no activity up there. So,
The DTF.
no, the library.
The library.
No,
They're not getting $7,000 worth of
but
benefit.
that's the result of the scrutinization that you just mentioned. You've got legal opinions on both sides that seem to cooperate with one another. So
I would say it's more of a fact that the allocation method is, for the most part, 99.9% represents the benefit that people are derived. But in this case, transactions up there are minimal, but they still get banged for $7,000.
but the library's not sitting with several $100,000 in reserves earning interest on it.
Right.
So this library village goes to the county library.
I know. My point, though, is in relationship to the other ones that are receiving changes or amendments. So at this point, we're looking at following through with the library's exclusion for the cost allocation to the extent that we build them, right? Okay, I'm fine with that, but there was other agencies on there as well. Could you tell us those?
My proposed amendment only relates to the library.
Yeah, and the rest.
Yes.
Just
The others have been resolved, I believe, satisfactorily.
No, I wasn't satisfied at our last meeting and argued against it. So I just want to make sure that those are still on there without any.
The only recommendation I'm offering in this amendment is to exclude the library from the list as approved by the finance committee, with everything else staying the same.
Well,
Commissioner Dean, I accept your justification and clarification. I'm fine with that.
We're pulling it from.
I'm ready to move on.
As a matter of discussion, while I'm acceptable with the library's condition, I'm not for the other ones. And since we're lumping that all in, you know, my vote is going to be to go against it because
I'm not lumping
Yeah.
anything. I'm making one exception to the proposal.
and I would like to, you know, if I could vote on that separately. And the other two departments, if I remember, there are two other departments with exclusions, do separately with those, that would be great. Or if we would like to amend those as well,
That was just.
only in the other direction.
We're just amending the list for the 7,000
The library only.
and we'll vote on that list as it stands.
Then the new list will just be as
So
presented.
we're voting on that
with the
list
library.
again.
So with the friendly amendment, the motion stands with the library excluded.
Yeah,
Otherwise.
because the list came to finance in this condition, so we.
Chairman, can I take a moment and see what that list is? Tara, do you have it for me to be able to look at?
Same as the last.
So we're looking at excluding the library,
Or just-
right here, the 7645.
We're treating it the way we did the others, except we're going to eliminate the whole thing 100%.
But we are going ahead with these other
Yes.
recommended buildings, but we're also going with this.
Yes.
We had the adjustment on the road commission,
Right.
road millage, drug task force.
CF, council on aging.
And that is, those adjustments are being in this.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. It sounded like you guys were talking about it was slightly different than I was thinking, but no, it's as I was
No.
thinking, so.
The same.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay. Karen. Did
We're
you,
okay to vote on the motion, not completely. With a friendly amendment, you don't have to vote on the amendment.
okay. All those,
Chairman, one last point. I just want it to be known and clear that I'm in agreement with the amendment, the friendly amendment for the library's sake. I'm in agreement with that.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same? Motion carried. That's our last one. Oh, wait a minute.
That's it.
Done with the allocations. For the rest of it.
Any public comments? No closed session. We need that all important.
I'll move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner, motion by Commissioner Dean, supported by Commissioner Heberlin.